Hello, friends around the globe. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Womanocity for Women with Curiosity. With me, your host, Tadia Rice, on Woman Radio. We are here for you. This is a station for women, with women, by women. And every week, I am so pleased to bring you remarkable guests, wonderful women who are doing things you may not necessarily expect. I've been able to interview women from every walk of life and every industry. And today, I have someone extremely special and remarkable, a woman who has made history and will continue to do so. Today, I have with me in the studio the fantastic, remarkable, exceptional woman, Suzanne PUANANI Vares Lum. She is now retired, but when I first met her, she was a major general in the United States Army. She is now an executive advisor and an expert on the Indo-Pacific region. And we'll talk about what the Indo-Pacific region is. But let me tell you what it is that she does that I think you will find most interesting and you will learn from. Executive leadership, advising, strategic planning, policy development and compliance, multinational coalition building and change management, tactful interagency negotiating. How many of you are doing that? Public speaking, team building, mentoring, and mostly, and what's so interesting, intelligence and information sharing. And all of this relates to women, peace, and security. Yep, that's why we have defense forces. Our militaries protect us in times of international or global challenge. Now, I know people have feelings about the military. Some people don't believe in it. Some people believe strongly. The reality is, every nation must protect itself from potential threats, whether that threat is physical on land or whether the threat is cyber and strictly through computers and hacking. So what Suzanne PUANANI Vares Lum brings to the table today is that she is one of the few major generals that has ever existed in the United States Army, and she has lessons for us all. Let me tell you a little bit about her because I know her and was very, very privileged to be with her when she received the Ellis Island Medal of Honor a few years ago in New York City. Suzanne is a Native Hawaiian born and raised woman. And after 34 years of serving in the military, she retired, but is still an influential executive with leadership and planning experience that she brings to the United States on every level. The U.S. Indo-Pacific Command, in which she serves, is the largest and oldest combatant command. It spans 52% of the Earth's surface and encompasses over 377,000 military personnel. She has had so many key roles dealing with the People's Republic of China, Russia, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, and even natural disasters. She has so much knowledge, knows so many policies, has established relationships globally. She understands the emerging trends and threats that support ongoing operations and ultimately foster peace, equity, and cooperation throughout the region. And that's the real purpose of the military. Welcome, welcome, Suzanne. It's so good to have you with me today. You are so exceptional. How are you doing?
Just fantastic. Aloha, Tadia. Thank you so much for that most generous introduction, I must say. Doing fantastic to be with your audience today.
Well, you deserved every word of it and even more. Would you tell us what is the Indo-Pacific Command? And then we're going to go into why women are so critical to it.
Thanks for that question. You know, the Indo-Pacific Command that I just retired out of after Being there for over 5.5 years of my 34 years of military service is the largest and oldest, what we call combatant command, where all of our military forces are located. So in other words, this area spans from the California coast to the west coast of India. Hollywood to Bollywood, polar bears to penguins, we would say.
I love that.
Yes, yes. And we deal with 36 nations, or we did when I was there, 14 time zones. And 4 of the 5 national defense challenges based on the United States national defense challenges that you just mentioned, the PRC, Russia, DPRK, and violent extremism. And of course, no other place in the world has more natural disasters in the Indo-Pacific region with the rim of fire around the Pacific. So it is the most consequential region. I mean, really, not just in terms of the military, but in terms of people and economics. There are more people who live in this region than any other place in the world. In terms of business and economic boom, we can definitely see that with China and Southeast Asia and South Asia. Definitely more international trade goes through the Malacca Straits. 75% of world trade goes through the Malacca Straits. The South China Sea, trillions of dollars of international trade goes through there. The largest ports, the largest economies sit within the Indo-Pacific region. So it really is, I would say, the most consequential region in the world. And I think everyone, including all of our audience members who are around the world, definitely have connectivity to this region right now.
Certainly, I know Africa does, with China and South Korea being so involved in development programs and imports that affect directly everybody. I mean, what don't we buy that hasn't come from that region, whether it's Vietnam, China, India? I mean, all these goods that are traversing our seas are basically coming from that region. And they are the giants of importing around the world. You work with other governments. It's very interesting that in your work, you have been many times the only woman, and you're dealing with the subject of women trying to develop peace and security amongst nations.
There's no question that no matter what country you go into the world, 50%, at least 50% will be women. So women's issues are integral in the issue of security. Wherever you go, whatever country where there's crisis and conflict or natural disasters, women are a significant part. You know, based on the UN Security Council Resolution 1325, that was brought up by the UN because they found that women are victims of crisis and conflict more than any other group.
I am so very glad you brought up UNSCR 1325, because I don't think that the world knows much about it unless you're involved with the UN. It's a critical program because we know that the most affected people in war are women and children and the elderly, who are often collateral damage, especially when there's warfare. We think about all the lives lost. And even when there is conflict, and it's not necessarily by an organized military, especially across Africa, that women and children and the elders are often murdered, kidnapped, used as pawns. So it deeply affects people.
They're often thought of as victims, and yes, many of them are. But this resolution really asserts that women need to be part of the solution, to be empowered, to be able to bring security, to respond to natural disasters, to be able to come to the table for resolution in the peace process, that they need to be part of it if we want long-standing peace in the region. Interestingly, a lot of the peacekeeping forces that come from the Indo-Pacific Command actually go to Africa. So whether they're peacekeepers in Bangladesh that go to Mali or the Congo, or peacekeepers from Korea, Indonesia, Malaysia, a lot of the peacekeepers are operating within Africa. And yet now the UN is requiring I believe it's 15% of their force to be women. Well, why? Why is that? Because where they're going to interact in communities where 50% and many of the villages, many of the women are there. And having women as part of the peacekeeping forces from these various countries really do change the dynamics. I had the distinct opportunity to go to Bangladesh when Ambassador Bernadette was our US ambassador to Bangladesh. And she brought together a lot of the women from the different services in the Bangladeshi armed forces. Many of them shared their stories, actually doing peacekeeping missions in Africa. And some of them said when they went, many of the young girls from the villages would say, "Are you here to cook and clean for the men?" And some of them said, "No, I'm actually an engineer. I'm here to build a new displacement camp. I'm here figuring out ways to get clean water." Actually, Bangladesh sent their first group of all women peacekeepers, brilliant women who came with solutions. But not only that, I believe inspired the young women in these villages to say, wow, that, sometimes you can't become what you don't see. So when you see these women who are in leadership positions, educated, and have solutions and are part of the dialogue, I think it inspires everyone else around the globe. That's just a small tidbit of how this wonderful resolution can help change the face of our world, not just the region, but our world, and how we are so interconnected. The thing that brings us all together for sure is that we definitely all have crisis, conflict. Defense is a key issue, part of security. And I'm glad you brought that up, Tadia, because a strong defense or a strong network of security within one's country allows them to feel secure, economy to thrive, and people to feel safe. In those countries in which women have access to security, to healthcare, to proper nourishment, education, a seat at the table for governance, those countries are much more successful and much more peaceful and prosperous. And I think that is something that the UN Security Council Resolution 1325 is trying to achieve, is to have the security and stability by including women. Inclusive security, we call it. Having a gender lens, looking at security not just from a male's perspective, but from women's perspective, because we all have a voice. So the more of us who talk about this issue, the more that we can share best practices. And it's not just a women's issue, this is a human issue. Men need to be part of this discussion. And fortunately, the US President Biden has reiterated just recently the importance of this act and how we can implement it in the United States and across the globe.
Thank you so much for that explanation. There is so much more to talk about with you, and we are going to be right back with the most remarkable Suzanne Vares Lum, retired Major General in the United States Army, who brings a wealth of knowledge about global security issues. Don't go away. We'll be right back with Womanocity with Tadia Rice.
Mosha Vi'i. My name is Keri Shitendero from Namibia, and you are listening to Womana Radio for well-organized men. I'm listening too.
My name is Linda Beal. I live in California. When I want thought-provoking programs to listen to, I pull up Woman Radio. I especially appreciate the fascinating women who are interviewed on Womanocity. Woman Radio is a lively and lovely way to spend my time.
No man is an island. Ladies, let's open up and discuss issues, whether good or bad. Platforms are there. Woman Radio happens to be just one of them. I'm inviting you on the couch to further discuss areas of concern every Thursday from 10 a.m. South African time to 12 noon. On the couch with me, Yvonne Chaka Chaka, here on Woman Radio, well-organized men, for we are.
Meet me at the party on the couch.
Welcome back, everyone, to Womanocity for women with curiosity like you and me and my remarkable guest, retired Major General Suzanne PUANANI Vares Lum. We've been talking about the United Nations SCR 1325 action that promises and is trying to bring women into peacekeeping and has done so, because we know that with war, there is violence. Suzanne, would you give us some examples of what you know about this subject?
Absolutely. So just a quick preview, so it's really having women, number one, being having meaningful participation in the decision-making process related to conflict and crisis. So not just conflict meaning warring, but even crises, natural disasters. And I was earlier talking about Bangladesh, and I want to use this quick scenario, if you don't mind. In Bangladesh, they often are victims of floods. And oftentimes in these small villages, men work in the cities, so women are left behind. So rather than having them victims, focus the education on helping them to become Red Cross certified, emergency response certified, being able to take the elderly and the children into safe locations. How do you do recovery from disasters? And that's where the focus started, because they realize is they have a gender lens on looking at crisis and conflict. And the other piece I was mentioning earlier about the UN Security Council resolution mandating a percentage of the peacekeeping forces in Africa or around the globe must be women, because they are dealing with a total population that has at least 50% women. Another reason for this is not just because of the great insights that these women can provide, but also there are issues of gender-based violence that we've seen. When you have women in a group, and I think most would attest to this, is when they come in, there's almost a sense that this country has brought their women into my country. That sends a different message. And if we don't think that gender-based violence has long-lasting consequences, we just need to look around the world where there is serious animosities, and you cannot get certain countries, even in our region, for over 75 years during World War II when there was gender-based violence. Ask now to bring particular countries that I think you all know what I'm talking about, particular countries who have a hard time coming to the table because there are animosities from gender-based violence, rape as a weapon of war that was used. And that is a serious wound to a country or a people or a tribe. That has long-lasting effects for peace and security. So we must do all that we can to ensure that that never happens. That is not just a natural consequence of war. That disturbs the entire peace process.
Suzanne, I think that this show, we can name names. Let's go ahead and name names. Are we talking about Korea? Are we talking about Nigeria?
I would say all of those. I mean, you even look in the Balkans, right? Gender-based violence around the world, we can see all of it throughout history. We can see it right now. And concerns about gender-based violence in displaced persons in Myanmar with the Rohingya going into Bangladesh. Over 1 million living in squalor. The potential for human trafficking is great in those kinds of environments. But because, as I mentioned, Bangladesh has been very tuned in on this UN Security Council resolution, they have made actually extra efforts to ensure that the young girls and women and young boys as well are protected. When we talk about youth also, so while it's called Women, Peace and Security, really we're talking about gender security, because in some cases we see young boys as child soldiers, or young boys being exploited, also trafficked along with young girls. So this is not just limited to girls, also boys as well.
Absolutely. You make me think of the DRC now and of the child soldiers that as 10, 11, 12 years old have to go out and kill people.
Right.
What does that do to their psyche? Not to mention, what does it do to 8, 9, 10-year-old girls who've been raped by soldiers and often get pregnant, also suffer fistula injuries that will maintain throughout most of their life? What does this do to people and their psyches? What does it do on a larger basis to the national psyche, the regional psyche? Isn't this where racism can raise its ugly head?
All kinds of ills really can raise its ugly head for sure. We need to make people aware that there are long-term consequences for gender-based violence, rape as a weapon of war, exploitation and human trafficking. All of those things bring instability long-term. All countries need to do. So why should countries care about UN Security Council Resolution 1325? You want a more prosperous country. You want your economy to boom. Then you need to involve the talent of all people. You're only tapping into 50% of the talent if you're not using women in your country. Women come when they're given opportunities, when they're given education, when they're given good health care. when they're given ways in which they can balance family and work. Now, understanding that culturally, there are some cultural differences between the United States and around the world, but those things can be worked out in regional and local solutions to including women in problem solving. I think the statistics show for themselves. The most prosperous nations, the most stable nations, those with the lowest level of corruption, women have a seat at the table, or women have access. Now, that looks very different, obviously, by country, because we all have individual cultures. And, how we do it in the United States doesn't mean the way we do it around the rest of the world. And that's okay, because respect and protection of women and inclusivity transcends culture. Human rights are basic human rights, no matter what. And sometimes people tell me abuse of women, rape of women, or really it's just their culture. I say, and then my answer back often is, if it's culture, then why don't people brag about it in their country? No, they hide it because it is not part of their culture. It is part of a violation of basic human rights of being human. That's my response to that.
That is outstanding. Did you know that over 30% of women in South Africa are in the military, and they're aiming for 40%? How does that compare to the United States or India, since you're so familiar with India?
In terms of India and Bangladesh and South Asia, those numbers are rising, and I don't have the specific number. They just opened it up in Bangladesh, of course, to officers, and they're looking at enlisted. So their number is small, but they have the brightest. But yet thousands of women applied for a very small number in Bangladesh. And yet these are engineers, doctors, lawyers, highly educated women. In the United States, about 16% or so, depending on the service, are in our U.S. Armed Forces. And of course, we have a volunteer force. So that number definitely has increased in some of our, especially like the Air Force. And now, as of 2015, all jobs are open to women. And we actually have a very high number of general officers. In the Army alone, in the active duty, the National Guard, and the Reserve, we have 70 female general officers. And that's just in the Army alone. That doesn't include admirals in the Navy or the Air Force, which has, I'd say, a higher number than the Army does. It's pretty significant. But places like, for example, the PRC, I think, has only 2. Russia, maybe only a couple. So in the United States, we definitely, on high-level leadership, we have a lot of general officers. And we now have what we call a combatant command. In charge of the whole Southern Command is General Richardson. She's first female to be combatant commander in that command. So we have a lot of female 4-stars now that we didn't have before.
Now, let's talk about your military service, because it's quite impressive. You are a 2-star general. How many wars have you served in?
During Operation Iraqi Freedom, I spent 12 months in Balad, Iraq, and I ran the Joint Intelligence Center in Balad that allowed us to fuse the intelligence for that region. I was stationed in Germany during Desert Storm. And I've been through many natural disasters, but I visited many countries during peacetime. When I joined, it was the Cold War. I was stationed in Germany, my first duty station as a second lieutenant, when there was an East and West Germany. So I saw the reunification of Germany. I saw the change of Europe. I mean, just incredible.
And you're so young. You're still so young for you to say you remember the Cold War. You are just, may I say how old you are?
Absolutely. I'm 53.
You're 53 years old and you remember the Cold War, which really surprised me. You've been in 2 wars. You are a major general. You have done so much in such a short period of time. I really want to talk more about that because I think you have learned some lessons that are extremely shareable. And so I have a few questions for you, but first we have to take a very quick break. So please don't go away, folks. You are with the most remarkable Major General retired Suzanne PUANANI Vares Lum, and we're going to talk about more of her personal life and what she has to share for women around the world. And let me tell you, she's got great lessons. We'll be right back with Womanocity for Women with Curiosity on Woman Radio.
If you want to hear entertaining or exciting information, then Woman Radio is for you. From the creative to the provocative, intriguing to the challenging, it's great food for our ears. Women are building the world in unexpected ways, and Woman Radio is playing a major role. I'm Phoebe Kilby in Asheville, North Carolina, USA, and I hope you're listening to Woman Radio too.
Mna ndingukhwezi futhi ucenenda and ndithanda ukumamela iWomen Radio ndizokufunda izinto ezintsha ndive nomculo omnandi. Iinkqubo zabo zimnandi kwaye zisebenzisa ingqondo. Ukusukela On the Couch to Womanocity, hlala kukho into emnandi yokumamela nemfundiso entsha. Ndithanda kakhulu ukuba ngummameli. Ndiyavuya ukuba nawe umamele.
I support Woman Radio. The program is informative, creative, and shares the voices of women and new music. To me, it offers a free space to express relevant dreams and views and is a service to the listener and to all public discussion. I'm happy to support it. I'm Catherine Waddell Takara.
Welcome back, everyone. It's so good to have you with me here in Hawaii. And I am talking to retired Major General Suzanne Vares Lum, who has an incredible history of military experience and women in the military, all working for peace and security of everyone, men, women, children, the elders. Suzanne, let me ask you something that's a bit personal, because I really think you have something to say about this. And that is, I know you were born and raised in Hawaii. You are a remarkable cocktail of many ethnicities that have influenced you. I want to know how all of these elements of your identity, how it helps you walk in the world. How do you walk in the world?
Thank you for that question. You know, I do, if you don't mind my sharing, I am of Native Hawaiian ancestry, Portuguese, English, Tahitian, Chinese, and Japanese. So definitely a little bit of the world. And growing up here in Hawaii, this multicultural, multi-ethnic mix is not unusual here. But we still sit here in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. The tyranny of distance is great when you look at how 5 hours to California, 8 hours to Japan. We sit here when we've seen how significant this location is. But it really wasn't until I went into the Army that I was able to launch and see the world, particularly in the past 5.5 years, and going to countries, as I mentioned earlier, you know, Bangladesh, Malaysia, Singapore, Japan, Korea, Timor-Leste, Pacific Islands throughout Oceania. Many countries like Timor-Leste, people don't realize, oh, that's East Timor, you know, Indonesia, Philippines. You know, having been exposed to many cultures, being of different ethnicities allowed me to walk in the world where I can appreciate people and their uniqueness that they bring and the beauty that they bring, the beauty in language, art, culture, food, their unique histories. I feel that I can see them as part of this larger thing we call humanity that sometimes we forget. That there are so many things that we're more alike than not, but yet we like to point out those differences. So I think I walk in the world of seeing that we are all part of this amazing thing called humanity, and that we are more alike than we are different, despite the fact that the foods might be a little different. But we all want love. We all want peace. We all want security. We want the best for our children. You know, we want to shelter, food, clothing, and we want to laugh. And we want art and music. And we want families to be safe. Inside, I think even for women, that's what they want. They work so hard, no matter the difficulty throughout time. You see throughout the region that women will find a way, even if it's North Korea, to feed their children, despite the sanctions that are imposed on North Korea because of Kim Jong-un, who has really focused on himself rather than the people. We see starvation, and that has been in the news lately. The report I heard today was that they don't see the level of starvation. Well, I heard this woman, her name is Cassie Kim, a defector from North Korea. I got to hear her speak at U.S. Indo-Pacific Command. She was brought over as part of the Women, Peace, and Security. She said there's an underground market of women who actually bring over goods from the Chinese border, and they will risk their lives to do it. And so they sell food and goods on the black market to feed their family, and they actually make more than the men who work in their factories.
I would have never thought of that. We often focus on Kim Jong-un, but we don't think about the people that are suffering because we don't see them. We don't get to know about them. They're hidden. Oh my, isn't that interesting? There's this black market.
And it's all
women. You see, because
women.
Yes, women will survive, huh? Women will survive. Women will make sure that their children eat, even if they don't. That's what women do. Women are mothers. We take care.
Yep. And that's mothers around the world, no matter what, no matter culture, they will take care of their family.
Absolutely. Isn't that fascinating? I so relate to what you're saying about the oneness of humanity. We really are. And women need to understand that there is a oneness of being a woman, no matter what. When women begin to disunify, things really fall apart. And I don't think ever that the forces of darkness, if you will, the forces of evil, have ever been able to disunify women. I just don't think it's possible. What you're saying really just supports that very, very much. You joined the Army at 19 years old. Why did you do that? I mean, now you're retired and you're still so very young. Why did you go into the Army? What drove you to do that?
My dad served. He's a Vietnam veteran and served 40 years on active duty and in the National Guard. He just recently passed away, but that was a part of our life. All of my uncles have served. My sisters retired from the Air Force. My great uncles, most all of them, except my grandfather, because he was the oldest, served during World War II in the Pacific or in the European theater. So it has been a part of the fabric of my life. Growing up, when we only had 3 television stations and you had rabbit ears with the aluminum foil on the antenna, do you remember that? My dad would kind of dominate the TV. So he would, watch shows about Admiral Nimitz or MacArthur or Battle of Midway. So it was a part of my growing up. But, he didn't watch it because he was fascinated by death or harm. But I think he was more, and just as I was, fascinated by the courage that people showed, the willingness of people to do things extraordinary when called upon to do so. There is that fascination, I think, that some folks have, and I do too, that what causes people to be courageous when their lives are at stake? And what will you do when you believe in something? How much will you defend it? How will you work together to care and take care of one another and protect your family and way of life? I think it was more of that.
And I think that those who are not from military families, or even if they are, I think especially generations that faced the Vietnam War and saw the waste of lives, of American lives, really turned negative towards the military. And yet we need military. It is critical, but we have to do military right. And I think that from what I'm learning and seeing and knowing, that the US is definitely bending to the right of history now, because I think the US military learned its lessons as well. And, like you explained about Bangladesh and their army, they understand, they know. Countries that are maybe newer in their form of government realize this too.
I also want to share, if I could, countries like Japan and Australia, and I mentioned India earlier, but Japan, that traditionally sees women in a very traditional role, has actually risen the role of women. So I was able to do a quad Women, Peace and Security webinar with the Admiral from India, a surface warfare sea captain from Australia, and a surface warfare Navy captain from Japan. She has served on 6 different ships, but most people don't see Japan that way. They've had their first female fighter pilot graduate to fly fighters. They have Admiral Kondo as their most senior admiral in their Japanese self-defense force. She ran all the logistics at one point for the Japanese self-defense force. Having women as part of that discussion at the highest levels, for example, Prime Minister Abe, when he implemented Womenomics, he looked at involving women in the economy and giving them leadership roles for the prosperity of Japan. There are many like him, many men who are in leadership positions that are realizing that if you want to be successful, you want to maintain the security of your country and the economic health, you need to involve women in that process.
So you call it womanomics.
He called it Womenomics. That's what Japan called it. Yeah.
I love it.
It's bringing women. And so what are the things you have to look at? Childcare, where women, especially in a very traditional country like Japan, that is very prosperous because women have good access to healthcare, well educated, but they may not have full participation in governments or in leadership position. Now that is changing. You see women leaders, CEOs. The governor of Tokyo is a woman. Governor of Hokkaido is a woman. That is significant. They do not advertise it as much. And I don't think people realize that a strong economic country like that has women in these key roles. You know, they're also trying to address those challenges. When women are in the workplace or in the military, you need to provide childcare, opportunities, family leave for both the men and the women. So those are more progressive policies that allow for equal participation in the economy of their country.
That is so necessary and so appropriate. I mean, it's what we have to do everywhere around the world to achieve gender balance. And, you know, I think people sometimes get confused that it means the same. Okay, so you have a woman pilot and she's flying a fighter jet. Oh, she's trying to be a man. No, that's not what it is. It's a skill set that is needed in defense. If there's no man available, then a woman is available. You're a soldier. And gender isn't always the primary concern when you're talking about defense.
Yeah.
Being a soldier, if you can just address that for a minute, what is the headset when you are a soldier?
We call soldiers Army, Marines are Marines, airmen are from the Air Force, and sailors are in the Navy. So a soldier certainly is someone who is a dedicated warrior, ground, land-based warrior. However, you know, it is someone who is well-trained to be able to do their mission. And it's not just the infantry. The infantry is like maybe 18% of the military. Most of it, you know, you have intelligence, you have cyber warriors, you have space warriors now within the Army, you have helicopter pilots, artillery, armor. I mean, there's a whole range of things that you can do. Sometimes we only think of the foot soldier with his rifle. But first of all, in the Army, everyone's a soldier, and then you have your job. And that can range, like I've been an intelligence officer for most of my life until I was a generalist. That's why they call it a general, you know, do all things in leading and managing and planning. But I think a soldier, first of all, it's based on values. When a new young recruit comes in, basic training is both men and women now. When they come in, we try to teach them that you need to be well trained. We need to take care of each other. We have a saying, it says, I will always place the mission first. I will never accept defeat, and I will never quit. And the fourth one is, I will never leave a fallen comrade. So it's not about just yourself. It's about team. It's about what we can do together to help one another and to do what is right. There's a set of values. We call it leadership, LDR, SHIP, loyalty, duty. And it's not because the Army can't spell, by the way.
So leadership, so go over that again. Leadership.
LDR, SHIP. That's our acronym. But it's, you know, I joke that it's not that we can't spell in the Army, but it's loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, and personal courage. Honor, integrity, and personal courage. That is what we try to instill. And sometimes it is putting these young recruits, men and women, through some of the roughest, stressful situations so that during these times of crisis and conflict, they'll be able to perform their mission in the right way, in the honorable way, with integrity, following the laws of war and international law. And I think that's what we in the United States definitely teach, is holding everyone accountable to follow the rule of law, of international law. And I think the UN Security Council resolution helps us to do that as well. When you talk about gender, and you were mentioning, nobody knows the difference, who's flying that helicopter, who's firing that cannon, who's behind that machine gun or rifle. When we engage a community in some situations, as we saw over the last 20 years of persistent conflict for the United States in the Central Command area of operations, when we look at the community we're engaging, in a Muslim culture, men do not have access to women. So you must include women on that team, or you will not understand the complexity or the challenges or the problems in that community. We learned very quickly during Operation Iraqi Freedom 3, we realized that we couldn't engage the women in Iraq. We needed to add women. So quickly we brought on women from different jobs who were not trained in infantry. And the Marines did a super job creating female engagement teams. These teams of women were specifically designed to engage the women in these communities where men did not have access. That was a critical, unique role that only women could do, because should any of these women have contact with our military men in some of these countries, that could mean death for some of them.
Sure. And an escalation in war, too. I mean, all kinds of innuendo and all kind of risk that goes along with that, all because of extreme fundamentalism of thought or religion, whichever you want to call it. Oh, there's just so much more to talk about, Suzanne. I want to know what advice you have, but first, got to take a break. So very sorry. Folks, stay with us. We'll be right back with retired Major General Suzanne Vares Lum here in Hawaii with me in the studio today, and we will be right back.
Ich bin Leila Tavanaro Hedarian aus Wien und höre Woman Radio. Ich lerne so viel Interessantes von den Radiomoderatorinnen und liebe die Musik. Ich freue mich, dass ihr auch Woman Radio hört.
Womanocity is my favorite show on Woman Radio. Toddy interviews women around the world who are doing the heavy lifting and helping us learn from incredibly impressive and fearless female guests from every walk of life. Thanks, Tadia, for introducing me to remarkable women on Woman Radio. This is Ken Ostabo in Florida, and I'm listening.
Hi, Ramalekana, Light of Africa, South Africa, here in Pretoria. Thanks, Voni, for bringing Women Radio to life so that we listeners who have mental nourishment whenever we want it. There's no subject off the table. The Women Radio gives us the freedom to express our hope, dreams, fear, and determination to make a better world for our children.
Here we are today in the studio with Major General Suzanne PUANANI Vares Lum, who has just given us so much to think about in terms of women and the military and peace and security in our world. You've done so much in such a short period of time. You have retired from the military. You had an incredibly successful career. You were in 2 wars. You are now a consultant in security issues. And may I mention that your husband was also in the military, and I'm not sure if you served together at any point, but I'd like to know, what is the best advice you were ever given in life?
I appreciate those questions. There are a lot of great advice. I want to share one that I heard most recently that I've been sharing because of the topic is on women. So when I went to Mongolia for a humanitarian assistance disaster relief exercise, in Inner Mongolia in Hovd, which is really about 2-hour flight from Ulaanbaatar, there was the Secretary General for the Red Cross for all of Mongolia. She was the first female parliamentarian. And she and I were on a panel speaking to different women, military, police, government workers, young women. And she told them this piece of advice that I've been sharing with others. And she said, in Mongolia, oftentimes they live still in gurs or yurts with their livestock, they have to move because of the severe weather conditions. If they don't do it quickly, there could be some catastrophic results. So they get to point A to point B very quickly. But along the way, throughout Mongolia, there are a lot of wild dogs. And these wild dogs, they will go up, attack you for food, bark at you, try to get you to stop. And this is all along the way. And she says, and if you stopped every time, you would never get to your destination in time. What she was really telling us is that if we listen to barking dogs, when we're trying to get to our goal, we will never get there. So we need to not listen to those barking dogs. We need to keep that end goal in sight and get to our end goal.
Oh, that's brilliant. That is brilliant. Thank you for sharing that. And of all places, of course, Mongolia, you have indigenous people, you have indigenous thought, and sure enough, how simple, how true, how basic. Barking dogs, ladies, we've got to be careful of the barking dogs. Don't let anyone push you off your log. That is just amazing. I'd like to know, what would you tell your younger self about love, life, purpose?
You know, when you're one of the only few women, you know, first in this, first in that, and you're in the room and you're the only one, you can be very concerned and worried about how people see you. I've gotten to a point where I no longer worry about what other people think. If I did that, you will drive yourself crazy. I wish I could have told myself that younger, of course. But I wonder if I told myself that, Tadia, would I have listened to myself, believed myself, or do I need to go through these tough experiences first to realize that, you know what, you can't worry about what other people think?
Well, they're barking dogs. They may be growling or little barks, little yelps. Nonetheless, they're one of those barking dogs.
Exactly.
It's so true. And I think that as women age, and particularly around age 50, women feel comfort in their own skin and they begin to feel exactly like you do. You just don't care that much about what other people think. You know what's right. You know what's real. They don't. So their opinion is not more important than your own.
That's right. That's right.
What would you say about love if you could tell your younger self?
That sometimes you can find love in places that you never imagined. You know, I met my husband, you mentioned him, in ROTC, University of Hawaii ROTC, during exercise. So sometimes it will just show up at the places you least expect it. Romantic love, that is.
Well, you and your husband have been, who I've met, and he is just absolutely wonderful. You've been married a long time, and you both had military careers that often separated you, and you also had a family. You have two beautiful daughters. You've raised them. They're now in college, and they're just thriving. This is not an easy thing to do. I really marvel at you.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I'm really proud of my girls. And my oldest daughter just graduated from University of California, Santa Barbara. And then my younger daughter is heading out to George Mason University in Virginia, just outside of Washington, D.C.
Congratulations. How wonderful. And what's your next anniversary going to be?
We'll be married 34 years.
Wow. As long as you were in the Army, that's quite amazing.
We met in ROTC.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. What would you say about life and purpose? What would you tell younger women about their purpose?
I think each one of us have a unique purpose in life, and sometimes it's not evident at first. Sometimes we have to go through a journey or difficult times or challenging times, and we can wonder why me? Why have I been chosen? You know, for me, I have faith in God, so I know that He has a big plan, a larger plan. And sometimes we can't see it till we turn the bend, go around the corner, or we go a little further. Then it's becoming clearer. But at the moment, don't give up hope. Don't give up hope about what your purpose is, and you start questioning and you get down, because that happens to all of us. You are not alone. I would say, talk to people, find out. And your purpose will become clear. If you give your heart and you're really looking to serve others and not just yourself, you will find purpose.
Outstanding. What would you say is your biggest achievement to date after going through all that you have and achieving all that you have?
Raising two amazing girls in the midst of having a lot of great challenges and being away. You know, at one point I was gone for 18 months and the girls were very young. And to see them independent women, I think is amazing. To see them spread their wings and knowing that I was able to help them along the way to get to where they are, I would say that's my greatest achievement.
Wonderful. It's time to have some fun.
Okay.
I have 25 questions in 2 minutes. It's the Womanocity 25 question in 2 minutes speed round. Do you think you can handle this, Major General?
Okay, I can handle it. Bring it on. Bring it on. I will never quit.
Now, I will give you 2 passes if you can't answer any of them off the top of your head.
Okay.
But otherwise, you are on. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, here we go. What color or flavor is your favorite M&M?
Green peanuts.
Oh, are you a cat or a dog person?
Dog.
Would you rather eat chocolate or watch your favorite TV show?
Eat chocolate.
Oh my goodness. What's the one city you've always dreamed of traveling to?
Rome.
Ah, okay. I was going to say you've traveled everywhere. Are you a morning or night person?
Night.
What words do you live by?
Faith, love, and hope.
What's the one vice you wish you could give up?
Ice cream. Too much ice cream. Not just a scoop, but lots of scoops.
What's the best compliment you've ever received?
People copying some of my planning methods.
Oh, how do you start your day?
Prayer and reading.
When are you most inspired?
In nature when it's quiet.
Food, sweet or savory?
Savory.
What makes you smile the most?
Seeing people happy.
What's the one thing people don't know about you?
I played the tuba, a large tuba, for 2 years when I was in middle school.
I'm sorry to laugh, but I can't. You're so diminutive and you're playing a tuba and you were a child. Oh my God, it must have been bigger than you.
It was.
Okay, heels, flats, or sneakers?
Flats.
What's inspiring you in life right now?
You know, when I watch people struggle through and rise up through various challenges around the world and even here at home. I have a small cousin, she's 15 and she's fighting cancer. And she told me, she said, God only gives the strongest the biggest challenges. And it came from a teenage girl telling me. I was so moved. I said, wow.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. I'm so sorry to hear that. I hope she will be the victor over this horrible disease.
She's doing well.
Good, good. Okay, what's the most adventurous thing you've done in your life? Oh my God, you've had so many adventures.
I stayed in the Army for 34 years, seen all kinds of countries around, all kinds of bizarre foods, and got to see so many unique things that I never imagined.
It's true. Your life was an adventure, all of it. Oh my goodness. How would you define yourself in 3 words?
I would say faithful, trustworthy woman.
Okay, I like that. Diamonds or pearls?
Oh, diamonds.
Oh, excuse me. What's something you notice about someone when you first meet them?
Their smile, if they're smiling or not.
What's the one talent you wish you had?
I wish I was good at math.
You're not?
No.
That's a surprise. Oh my God. What's your favorite color?
Green.
What color of clothing do you wear the most?
Green.
Really? Most
Yes.
people don't do the boat. They don't do. Oh, interesting. What's the cutest thing on planet Earth?
Babies.
What's the best thing that's happened to you this year?
Both my girls graduating, one from high school, one from college. That's awesome.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
What's your favorite song?
I would say related to women is Respect, R-E-S-P-E-C-T, Aretha Franklin. Women should have respect. If they are given the respect, societies will boom.
I agree. Oh my goodness. Well, that is the end of our time today with the most remarkable and exceptional retired General Suzanne PUANANI Vares Lum. Is there anything you want to add, Suzanne, that I didn't happen to ask or say?
I just wanted to say aloha to everyone out there, and I'm just so grateful for this time to share around the globe. This is coming right here from the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Mahalo nui.
Mahalo nui to you as well. That means thank you very much, folks. And I mahalo nui all of you for being with me today on Womanocity for Women with Curiosity on Woman Radio. And please join me next week, every Saturday night at 9 p.m. South Africa time for another remarkable episode with another magnificent woman like our guest today, Suzanne Vares Lum. You are such an inspiration, my dear. Again, I thank you for being with me. And believe me, I give you all the respect.
What you want, baby, I got it. What you need, you know I got it. All I'm asking is for the respect when you get home. Girl, baby, when you get home, you with me, I ain't gonna do you wrong while you gone. I ain't gonna do you wrong, baby, down I don't go. All I'm asking. Like it's supposed to be done. Give it to me. Ooh, you get sex sweeter than honey. Guess what? Straight long money. All I need is to respect when you get on. Yeah, baby. When you get home, you with me now, yeah. R-E-S-P-C-T. Find out what it means to me. Take LTTT. A little respect. Yeah, baby. A little respect. But I keep on trying. Running out of food. And I ain't lying. Yeah, respect. It's what I want. And respect. Sure what I need. Talking about on my land. Shock it to me. Yeah.